NottsRockCast is an association with Regular Riot. Welcome to NottsRockCast, the Notts Alternative Scene podcast. And here is your host, Jethro D, bringing you everything Notts and rock.
Welcome back, Notts Rockers, to NRC-025 over YouTube. Yes, this week we are talking with a chap that's led an absolutely extraordinary life with an amazing band. Yeah. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ding that bell if you want to be notified every time a podcast is put on YouTube. So let's get to the chat over Skype.
Hangouts a lot. That works pretty well.
Oh, does it?
Mm.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one.
Yeah, it just seems to be a little bit less clunky.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do quite a lot of podcasts through that when a lot of people start to use it. It's good.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just double check that's not feeding back on myself. That's cool. Right. Okay. Interview today. I'm with the famous Peter Lee from Lawnmower, Deth. Say hello,
very
Peter.
kind of you. That's a big build-up, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, I'm not going to lie. I don't know that much about Lawnmower, Deth, other than the fact that you're a really fun band to go and watch, I've been told.
Yeah, well, that's what people tell us. Yeah, but many would say old enough to know better band to go and watch. But
oh, right.
But yeah, I'll take fun band to go and watch. That sounds all right to me.
No, it was a guy called Andy when I was working in Ollerton that actually turned around and said, do you know what? This is a band you need to listen to. And I was like, okay, I'll have a listen. I must admit, I listened to a few songs, really enjoyed it. Then got to Bloodstock, and unfortunately you clashed with another band, and I was trying to think who it was earlier, or else I would have seen you live for once.
I think last time we did Bloodstock, we were up against Devin Townsend.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so you probably went to see Devin.
I probably did. I don't think I've ever seen Devin at Bloodstock.
No, there you go. So, okay. No,
it must have been.
The other one might have been Obituary. That could have been the other clash, I think.
No, I would have seen you over
against them once and Devin once. So we've done it twice.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like
Either way, you went to see the wrong person, but...
Well, yeah, obviously now, especially from... I thought I'd do some research, go and watch some videos, and wow, I was actually blown away at how much I'd forgotten how good you are as, like... Well, not how good, but how enjoyable as a thrash metal fan I found all of your music.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So, what would you class yourself as genre-wise?
Well, I get asked this one a lot. You see, for me, it's the same thing, but I'm not sure people necessarily agree. I think we're a crossover band. I think we always have been.
Okay.
Just because I think there's as much punk as metal in there, and so naturally, by definition, that makes us a crossover band. So. It also depends, I guess, where we're playing or who's watching us. I mean, over here, I guess we're synonymous with the fact that we were part of that British thrash scene back at the end of the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And I suppose we were one of the big bands at that point when we were little lads and all that kind of thing. But even back then, we're very much a thrash band, I guess, in the UK.
Yeah.
But if we went out into Europe to play, we just played with the punk bands. We were out there with the Damned and people like that. So we used to play punk shows. We played with Bad Religion and people like that out there, and so they just saw us as a British punk band.
Yeah.
So flip a coin and take it where it is. And I guess we're not sort of balls deep thrash.
Yeah.
Particularly now, and by that I guess I mean partially technical proficiency, or a lot of it being that.
But not as in the band, then you're saying.
No, but I don't think
you meant as in the genre thrash, but
yeah,
not.
I don't think we ever had that sort of that clinical thing that a lot of the thrash bands had going on. Particularly if you listen to the German stuff, that was like literally uber clinical, too clinical. I always thought I was never particularly German stuff. But even the Americans being as slick as they were, it was still, sort of balls out, but really clinical and tight and double kick and all that kind of stuff. And I think we were always a bit more chaotic than that.
Yeah,
but people like boxes, and you get put in a box, and I guess we got put in the thrash box, and that's fine. I'm totally happy with that.
Yeah,
and he was definitely that time back in the 80s. That was half the stuff that we were probably into anyway. We were there and going to all those early thrash shows, there for the first sort of Metallica Anthrax tour and the early Slayer tours and bands like that coming over.
Yeah.
We were well into that stuff, but by the same time, really got into those early hardcore bands as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that had a lot of influence on us, and so that's why I see us that way. I think, but you're probably better off asking somebody in the crowd.
All right, okay.
They'll tell you what we are, but I think these days, if we sounded like sticking your head in a cement mixer in 1988, we probably sound quite tuneful these days, by comparison to, a lot of the extremity stuff that goes on. So, that's quite interesting as well, the way it's developed. But, we'll call it a thrash band. Let's call it a thrash band, just for ease.
That was the longest explanation of an answer I've ever had.
Do you know what? I can hear Steve in my band going, "Oh God, he's waffling again."
I think that's brilliant. I do like to ask all my guests to give a quote of inspiration that you've learnt from your time in Notts. But what would you say is your quote of inspiration now that you've moved?
There's places with hills outside your boundaries. I don't know, mate.
What does that mean?
Well, it's a bit, it's a bit flat round Notts, isn't it?
But that sounded like a quote onto itself.
It was, clearly that pint of Peroni's kicked in and I've had a deep moment. I live in the Hilllands these days.
Yeah.
So I'm all about hills and rivers, and Notts is all about a river and a lot of flatland. But it's a great city. I'm still in Notts a lot. I love Nottingham. So, the accent's still there, and the boys in the band are still there, which is what brings me down. I've still got family there, so I still love coming back down to Notts.
Okay. So were you originally from Notts then, starting this band? Because Lawnmower Deth is synonymous. I don't know if that's a word.
It's close enough. I know what you're trying to say.
They are known for Nottingham, and it's one of the things that I ask a lot. Oh, do you know any local bands I can talk to? And most times people will go, Lawnmower Deth. Talk to them guys. They're funny as.
I think if anybody asked me, I'd say we're a Notts band. For certain, it's irrespective of the fact I don't live there anymore. It's still a Nottingham band.
Yeah. But did you originally?
Yeah, we were born out of that. So, I mean, other than, when I was an absolute whippersnapper and I was born in Hull.
Right.
So that's where I come from originally.
Yeah.
But, I spent 20 years in Nottingham. Rest of the boys all still live there. So we'd absolutely class ourselves as a Nottingham band. So we got into being in a band because of the local scene then and the bands around us. And we're having some of that. And we jumped in as well. We just got a lucky break, really.
Oh, no.
But I think everything about the band's Nottingham. We were signed to a Nottingham record label.
Was that Earache?
Yeah. We were on Earache, yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. What is your profession outside the band then?
I'm a professional grown-up these days.
Oh, right.
As most people of my age are, I run a massive software company. I sort of work in software and education.
Oh, right.
So I've been working in education for a very long time. So I'm an ed tech guy.
What?
So EdTech, education technology.
Oh, right, okay.
So yeah, that's what I do, and I'm not making a noise. But
cool.
we're all the wrong side of 50 in this band these days. I hasten to add, we're still just the wrong side of 50. So it's inevitable, isn't it? By the time you get to this point in your life, you've probably picked up, some of the glories of being this age. So married, kids, work hard, and then chuck this one in for good measure as well. And it's a nice place to be, actually. It's more fun than I think it's more fun than when you were sort of headlong into it sort of 25 years ago, I would think.
Yeah.
You value it more.
Oh, cool. So the band is definitely going to be coming to another gig soon, aren't you?
We'll be coming to some periodic, occasional gigs at a very slow pace, I would imagine, because that's how we normally do it. We're not one of those sort of full entities. Steve always calls us weekend warriors. He's probably right with that.
Yeah.
All those years back, it was everything that bands did back then, and with no internet to add to that. Hard to think that was ever the case, but we went and recorded albums, then we went on tour because that's what everybody did. And I want to talk to you, in a computer, you'd have written me a nice letter, and so on. So these days, we just go out and we can pick and choose, and we tend to do festivals.
Yeah,
which is something I guess it didn't really exist then, did it? There were so fewer festivals,
especially not on the scale now.
Oh, well, I don't think it's even the scale, I think. In fact, I got into this conversation. If you start me on this one, you'll never shut me up. But
all right.
me and H out of Acid Rain have a real bugbear with people overusing the word festival. In our day, they were called all-dayers, and that's what they were.
Yeah.
You went to all-dayers at Rock City, or, in the car park of a pub, and it was X amount of bands, and it was all day. And first band would go on at 2, and the last band would be on at 11. And a festival was going to Monsters of Rock. That's what a festival was. Now it seems everybody's got a festival. No matter what size it is. Festivals need tents and fields and stuff like that for my money. But you're right. I mean, that scale wasn't there. If you're into metal, you went to Donington.
Yeah.
Probably alternative stuff around that point. You went to Reading. Leeds wasn't on the road map, and if you were into wafty bollocks, you probably went to Glastonbury, and that was about really, wasn't it? There wasn't too much outside of that stuff.
No.
But I think there's so much choice now. Partially it's a good thing, and partially I think you see these festivals drop in and drop out very quickly.
I saw a festival. I saw a festival the other day say for some reason they couldn't go ahead with the festival because of visas. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember who it was.
That would be amplified. We were headlining one of the stages.
Yeah.
So we found out about an hour before everybody else found out, and we just got an email to say that one wasn't on.
Oh, that's a shame.
So I think it genuinely is a shame, because I think they'd started to carve a bit of a niche down there.
Yeah, I didn't understand their reasoning, but I won't go into that because that's politics, and I don't do two things on this podcast, is politics and Brexit. So they're two subjects we can't touch on.
Well, fundamentally, they tick the same box, don't they?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get into the politics of it all either.
Cool.
I know one of the guys who was working on that festival, and I know he put a lot of work into it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a shame twofold. I think if organisers have, put their back into it, and have spent, a good chunk of time and probably money trying to make something happen. And then for the punters that have planned weekends away in terms of travel and camping and, bands they want to see and so on, then it's an even bigger shame for them, For us, it's a shame we're not going to play, but guess what? There's always another show around the corner, isn't there? So it's less of an issue, I guess.
Well, I hope so. In Nottingham soon, please, so I can come and see you.
Well, hold on to that thought.
Good. I like that thought.
Not that we're saying anything yet, but hold on to that thought.
Cool. Right. So what compelled you personally to be into the alternative scene?
I came through quite a strange background. So as hard as it is to believe, I was classically trained in piano and I was classically trained in the trumpet.
Yeah.
And I came up through sort of playing in orchestra pits and stuff like that, all as a school kid, all that kind of stuff. So I'd always performed to some degree, I guess. And then once, you hit those formative years, you find what's for you. You find the music that's for you. And for me, it was going to youth club. And the first time I went to a youth club, and there was a load of grebos stood there head banging to, some early Quo stuff. And I was like, I'm having some of this. And that was the start of that journey for me. That I discovered that. I guess from that, it just developed really quickly. I guess as kids we were into that new wave of British heavy metal scene. We were all sort of big Motorhead fans. Quite mainstream, I suppose, when you look back now. But we'd have been into, for me it was early Rainbow. For others in the band it'd have been Maiden or Priest or whatever. We're all into that kind of thing. And I think probably the development and sort of going, sort of to more of an extreme alternative end was, I guess, the first thrash stuff started to break through. So definitely Venom black metal was a big influence. First Exodus album. When they came out, that kind of changed the rules for me. It was, don't get me wrong, first Metallica's, first Anthrax's, all important stuff. Yeah. But I think it was the fact that people could make that level of noise and get away with it. Yeah. Was just instantly it for me. So yeah, Venom, Warfare. There's really early noisy punk metal bands for me. I think were just really interesting and just got straight into it. And once we realised you could make a racket like that, then myself, Steve, Chris, who were all old schoolmates, instantly wanted to be in a band, really. And it was great, just the idea you could, get that. And then very quickly, we all sort of started to find each other, really, So that's when we met the, Flymo, the drummer. And he probably, musically influenced me a lot because he was finding stuff that none of us knew about. He just had a knack of finding this stuff. And he was really into things like Hellhammer and bands like that. Yeah. And he got more and more extreme really quickly. So I think we all discovered that stuff very quickly, which led us into it. Yeah. I was quite quickly influenced by, a lot of the early grindcore scene stuff like that. So, really early Napalm Death and I guess other Notts bands that we used to go and see, like, Concrete Socks, Intense Degree, a lot of the, the really crusty hardcore bands like that. It was just good stuff. And that all kind of pushed us in that direction, really. And then I guess from there, I discovered all the American stuff. That's really, and still is for me, the American hardcore stuff is really what I got into. So really sort of getting into your DRI, Circle Jerks, all that kind of scene, really. So I think it wasn't, a deliberate decision to become an alternative band. I think it's just, you get influenced very early at that age, don't you? And it kind of walked us into it.
Yeah, I don't know if you've listened to any of the podcasts where I've explained where I've got into metal, but it was my next door neighbour that got me into it. And it wasn't even the fact he'd even told me about it or talked about it. It was the fact he had his windows open and was blaring metal like all the time. Turns out it's Jose Griffin from Gomorrah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen Jose for years.
Bloody hell, you do know him then, I thought.
Yeah. No, Gomorrah's supported us quite a few times. Yeah.
And then I got to know John, the bassist, and Mike, the lead guitarist.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to really enjoy speaking to Mike all the time. And then when I found out...
Jose was a really nice guy. They were a good band as well.
Well, Jose introduced me to Earth Tone 9 when I was first getting into it. And we went to the White Horse in High Wycombe.
Okay.
And I was just like in awe. And then when I moved to Nottingham to remember that Earth Tone 9 came from Nottingham, it was like, wow. Yeah. But yeah.
I still hear from a few of those guys. In fact, Owen was lived with me for quite a while, so he was a flatmate of mine.
Yeah. I have sent him a message to see if I can get one of them on the podcast at some point, but I'll see what happens.
Yeah, you definitely should. Yeah, they're still all not. Well, Earth Tone 9, very occasionally surface, don't they, and do a show and then disappear again.
Yeah, well, they turned up and did the gig with Pitch Shifter.
Yeah, they did the Pitch Shifter shows.
Really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
It was really nice to see like them after so many years of not seeing them live, to suddenly seeing them back out again. I'll tell you something, they were as good as I remember them. Yeah,
we played Damnation Festival in Leeds, and they were on the bill with us. And this is, probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. They were fantastic. They were absolutely great.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a funny path that people take to get into this culture. Would you say?
I don't think you don't pop out, do you, and think, right, that's me.
Yeah.
It comes from all sorts of places. It's funny you say it was somebody's window being opened. Steve's the same, our guitarist.
Yeah.
He still talks about the day that he just heard this God-fearing noise coming out of his next door neighbour's bedroom window at top volume, and it's the first time he heard Motorhead, and that was it. That was exactly his routine, the same thing. So it's great. It's exactly. I think this is the shame with other styles of music. Sometimes it doesn't have this bond that what we're talking about tonight has.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just unify somebody, or somebody turns around and says, that's a really great song, I'm going to go and download it, or I'm going to go and buy it, or whatever. And then they're on to the next thing and the next thing. If you come in neck deep, don't you? And you kind of embrace the whole culture. And that's great. I don't think there's too much that still does that. But, rock, metal, the extreme stuff, punk, it all does that still. There's still that really good, circle of people. And generally, and genuinely, I think as well, the people in there are good people as well. And I think that probably gives it the longevity as well.
Well, that's something I talk about Bloodstock a lot with friends that are not necessarily into alternative or metal. And I'll tell them about the fact that I hardly zip up my tent now that people know that I'm going to have to zip up my tent this year. But I go out, I have fun, I drink probably more than I should do, but I'm not worried, I'm not anxious, I'm not fearful of anything. Unless I get into a Slayer pit. But then I hear people go into other named festivals, and they're like, well, I have to carry everything on me all day. I'm worried if I'm out at so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, you're getting to metal.
No, 100%. Bloodstock's got a really nice feel to it.
Yeah.
I love going to Bloodstock because, you can't walk more than 10 yards and end up having to stand and chat with somebody, and, you either knew them or you've never met before. They're just popping over to say hello.
Yeah.
But he's just got a really great feel to it. And the people that are there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
And they're there nearly as much for the social and the beer as much as they're there for the bands. But it just all glues together in a really great way.
I'm there personally because I tell people it's my holiday.
Yeah.
It's where I get to not think about my podcast. I don't think about my studio. I don't think about my life. I don't think about rent. I just get to sit in a field and watch bands that I enjoy.
There you go. Well, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Not really. Well, playing would get better than that.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes it's nearly as pleasurable as, watching bands as not. I was at Download, a couple of weeks ago, and just went just for the day. And I went with the wife, and my daughter came, and then I met my son there, who was there for 3 days anyway.
Yeah.
And I just loved every minute of not even having to think about setting up. Are the right things in the right place? What's it going to be like? Is anybody going to turn up to the stage? Or any of those kind of things you ask yourselves at a festival. It was just great swanning around watching a few bands.
Yeah? Oh, brilliant. That's nice to hear the different side of it, especially if it's coming from a vocalist.
No, I still really enjoy going to, gigs, actually. And I tend to go and see stuff that I was probably too far up my own arse to go and see when I was a kid, because I was just into, whatever it was I was into at that moment in time. And so that's what you went to see because that was cool, and I was only going to go and see stuff like that. So these days I go and see bands and I really don't care, I just enjoy going to see good live music. But I went to see the Specials a few weeks ago. I thought were amazing, and I went to see New Model Army a couple of weeks ago. It's just a good night out, really.
Oh, brilliant! I think I'm liking the fact that you're someone that I can look up to for the fact that you're still doing it and you're still enjoying it. You haven't given it up. I've heard so many people and then they aren't, and they don't take it through life, and it's more of a phase. But I like when I speak to someone and it's just through and through.
Well, we did the whole scene thing. And I'll be, we were probably, I don't think we're ever arseholes. I think, we're probably relatively unique. We're quite nice blokes, and we'll chat to anybody.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed it then. But when you're in a scene tends to bring a bit of competition.
Yeah.
And there was definitely that jockeying for position thing going on. And who was on the bigger label and who could get their album out first and who was getting the biggest support slots. And, there was all that kind of scene posing that was going on, as well as the good stuff. Do you know what? It's probably an age thing as much as anything else. But quite honestly, we don't care. We got asked to... we've never actually said we'd reform, but, we got asked to get back together for one gig. And the gig offer was so great. We said, well, why wouldn't we take that?
Yeah.
So we went and played the Ali Pally in London, and 10,000 people. And why the hell do you not want to go and do that and support Bullet for My Valentine? And we thought that would be it. We were just going to have a jolly boys' day out.
Yeah.
And consequently, festival after festival after festivals just continued to roll in, and we just enjoyed the day out. That's the truth of it. So rolling up to these monolith-sized festivals, where there's 100,000 people, and you've got to go and play for half an hour and put a decent show on, and all the legwork that goes in. I don't think people realise quite how early you've got to be when you're at those things. You've got to be there 6 hours before stage time, and it's a night your gear to the stages, and working with a stage manager and all the crews and all this kind of thing. There's a fair bit of headache. But the truth is, once you've done that bit, because most people know what time of day to put us on at. And we are your classic 4 o'clock in the afternoon band at any festival, if they've got any sense, because they'll put us on once people have started drinking. And not put us on too late when they've had too much to drink.
I was going to say that's
classic.
That is second round for me about 4 o'clock at Bloodstock.
Exactly. You're just getting ahead of steam up. There's the bits you didn't care about, and then you just start to get yourself into a good old party mode. Well, why wouldn't you roll somebody like us out? But what that means for us is, by the time we've done that, and we maybe done a little bit of press, we get to come out and watch the last 2 or 3 bands of the day every single time.
Oh,
and
cool.
we're there for nothing. In fact, we're generally getting paid for being there, which is, a bonus. So it's great. So we're kind of there as fans as well as, getting off on the fact we're getting to play. It's good.
Oh, cool. Okay. As I said, I'm not the biggest fan, so it's kind of hard asking the questions.
No, that's cool. I'd much rather. So far, you haven't done what 90% of people do, and ask me if you were a yoghurt, what flavour would you be? So I'm eternally grateful that we're just chatting about other stuff.
Well, personally, it was. I want to ask: is there any up and coming bands that you'd recommend?
Oh, there's an interesting question. What am I listening?
Because at the moment, like, Metal to the Masses in Nottingham has just finished with the grand final. So Widow's got through to the New Blood stage, but surprisingly, Rob Bannister has... I can't pronounce his second name unless I said that right. He's actually put Pemphigoid through to the Jägermeister stage. And I just was like, oh, hang on. Is there any bands you would suggest for us to listen to as a different opinion?
Do you know, I am probably the worst reference point to ask for that.
Okay.
That's just me being truthful. I don't think I'm capable of finding a new band. I'm the wrong age.
Right.
I'm not that deep in there anymore. And so, I probably wouldn't do anybody. What I do is I kind of see it for a second time round, and I really enjoy this. So my son will come to me.
Yeah.
He's 17.
Oh, right.
He'll come to me, and it's a bit like going back into tape trading. It's just that he doesn't know it's like tape trading. So he'll put Spotify playlists together for me.
Oh, cool.
And then send me a playlist and say, there's some stuff in here. I think you should go and check this out. So he'll bring me new stuff that way. And he doesn't mean, it's the local band who are just sort of starting to break through or something like that. But, he'll bring me some pretty interesting stuff. So, he drops on Narwhals in front of me, or Zebrahead he brought to me, or Royal Republic before they broke, and stuff like that. And he's got a decent set of ears on him. So, I tend to look at somebody like him, really, just to see what's going on. And, kids have got pretty good ears on them, to be quite honest. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's got quite an interesting, relatively eclectic taste. He's not really into the really heavy stuff in the way you and I might be, but he's really influenced by sort of ska and punk and interesting metal bands. So he's kind of dragging some of the stuff I've instilled in him. And then he'll go and find his own stuff, and then he brings it to me. So I like that. I like seeing it through somebody else's eyes, rather than sort of going on. To be quite honest, I wouldn't necessarily know where to go and find it, actually. We'll see it when we do shows and people might open up for us or something like that. Or, Paddy in our band will be a classic person to ask. He's because he's in Line of Fire as well.
Yeah.
There's another sort of Notts Derby band.
Well, I'm gonna say nudge, nudge. Can you tell him to give me an email?
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah,
I'd love to talk to him.
I can say that out for you. Go.
Yeah.
Paddy will go to the opening of a packet of crisps. He's a lovely bloke, he's Paddy.
Cool.
But I'll tell you what, if you get Paddy talking, he really, really knows his stuff. And this goes for all the lads in this band. I think people get quite surprised by this.
Yeah.
But just because we're some noisy, chaotic band, it doesn't mean, we've not been embedded in it. And people have got quite deep musical tastes.
Yeah.
And really know the stuff. But Paddy will give you chapter and verse. You know, he'll you ask him what the top, 10 thrash albums in 1988 are, and he'll talk at you for hours. You think I can waffle on?
I'm going to have to remember that one.
Oh yeah, no, he's.
And ask him that if I can actually get him into a chat.
Really,
that'd be brilliant.
Really strong on that stuff, you know. He still loves wearing T-shirts with way too much print on them and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll do you an intro. You should definitely chat to him. But I mean, Line of Fire are a good band. They can really play.
Yeah, I don't think I've checked them out yet. I'll have to really have a look at that.
If you like that sort of dirty metal with some blues influence in there, think, Down or something
Two of the things that I grew up on most is blues
there you go, then.
and dirty metal.
So you should. There you go. There's my recommendation.
And a bit of ABBA from my
mum. Go and
mum.
check out Line of Fire.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to put that in the show notes for definite.
Yeah,
if you want to go and check out the show notes, it'll be on the website at NottsRockCast.co.uk.
Perfect.
Unfortunately, I do have to say that, or else people are like, "Where's the show notes?"
There you go. Get a quick plug in.
Well, definitely. What you were saying about the eclecticness, it brought back a memory. Kerrang used to do CDs on the front of their cover. I don't know whether they still do, but they didn't. They started doing like an interview series before podcasts were a thing on the internet, and I remember. I think it was Cold Chamber they were talking to, and they were talking about Sharon Osbourne, talking to them about Ozzy before he went on stage, used to listen to Peter Gabriel.
Okay.
And I just, for some reason, that came to mind as like the ultimate eclectic trait of anyone in the world, especially in metal.
No, I get that. Stephen Arbandi's a massive Kate Bush fan.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of Bush.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of Bush. But he worships Kate Bush. And I listened to, I don't know, if you're talking classic sort of guitar rock and so, I'll be off down the Pink Floyd route or whatever. But, Paddy's a massive Gilmour fan and so on, and he's not necessarily bands people would associate you with at all. But, we all have those moments in us, don't we, when you want to listen to that kind of stuff. You can't make your ears bleed all the time. You've got to come up for air now and then. So I totally get why Ozzy would be listening to stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who I was listening to today on my phone. I know I was listening to a bit of System of a Down, but I was listening to something else that really caught my attention, and I can't even think who it was now.
You see, if I'd been in any band or written any song, I'd be in System of a Down.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, just for me, just amazing. Absolutely amazing band.
The bit that I said today to my work colleague across from me, I turned around to him and I went, "Do you know what I really like about System of a Down?" And he went, "What? The fact that they're fucking amazing?" I was like, well, no, it was the fact that the guitarist moves over to allow the singer and the drums to just put in that, 3 seconds. And he went,
yeah,
it's just music, dude. I was oh.
You see, that's my kind of bag, that whole sort of, I guess people would call it alt metal, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
But, that is my bag because I like I say, I did that whole sort of metal thing, then became about hardcore. And I think for me, whilst it's the thing that killed off thrash, I was there for the whole grunge thing. But I still listen to, a lot of that stuff because it's generally way more interesting.
Definitely. Grunge was... it was one of them funny things with me because I didn't know about it when I went into secondary school, and people had already started being classed as grungers. So in a school where they had grungers, me coming along as a metalhead was completely alien to everybody, and they were like, "No, you're a grunger, mate." I'm like, "Well, what's a grunger?" And they're like, No, you're a grebo." And I'm like, "What's a grebo?" And I had to be bagged into this category. And this is kind of relating back to what you were saying earlier about you can't classify your band into a genre. People love these boxes. That's the only reason why I asked the question.
But you know what? When we were totally into thrash, what did you wear? You wore a pair of high tops.
Yeah.
Then you either wore a pair of combats or you wore really tight jeans, and then you probably had a checkered shirt and a t-shirt on.
Yeah.
And guess what? Grunge came along. I was still in combats and a checkered shirt. And now I still walk around in combats and a checkered shirt. It's all the same thing to me. But I struggle to say. Soundgarden would have been classed as a grunge band. They're Black Sabbath. It's just a metal band, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. This is what I like about bands that just turn around and go, we just play music. I know that they're more interested in the music than they are about being a type, I think is the word.
But, most people, I think, in any band, if they've got any soul or if they've got any soul about them and what they do, is they're doing it for themselves first and foremost. And after that, if people follow on and like what you do, then there's your big Billy bonus.
Yeah.
I don't know generally bands who don't do that. But there will be bands who are sort of formula driven or just trying to get the breaks or whatever.
Yeah. Or the likes on Facebook, as it is these days.
Yeah, of course it is, exactly. And, I think people can see through that. It might be a bit of a flash in the pan moment, but I think...
I kind of hope they do.
Yeah, I think generally do. I think people are underestimated for that. I think, all this stuff that we've been embracing and sharing love on tonight, these bands have been there and given it everything, and I think, people last that amount of time. Yeah. Because they do what they want to do and they care what they do and people have gone along for the ride of it.
Yeah. No, that's I think that's a great insight, and that is something I definitely preach by. Next time you're in Nottingham, I'm definitely going to buy you a drink because I'm enjoying talking about this.
I still look forward to that.
Yeah. I am going to ask you though. Sorry, I'm just trying to look at my iPhone at these questions that I can't really ask too much, but. What is your most favourite musical treasured object? It doesn't have to be an instrument.
Well, it won't be an instrument for me because I'm not a guitarist and I don't get excited by guitars and things like that. That's what the other lads do. So it's definitely not an instrument.
Yeah.
What do I own that for me it'll be photos, I would imagine, because photos and memories. I'm a big memory person.
Yeah.
I'm all about building memories, and I can say, I did that or I was there and I saw that or whatever it be. And sometimes I might just sit and flick back through photos on my phone like we all do, or, stuff comes up on your time hop. And I really do have to pinch myself sometimes when I see some of the places we've ended up or who I was with at the time. So I think, some of those sort of photo-based memories are quite amazing. So they're probably the most important things to me, because who I was with and where I was at the time. And that can be a mixture of, the boys in the band, my wife and my kids might have been there or something like that. So they're really important to me. And I think on a really sort of selfish kind of materialistic kind of way, there was a guy came to a show last year and he travelled all the way from America to come and see us play a show in London.
Yeah.
And he brought everybody. He was a massive ice hockey fan, so he had some Lawnmower Deth ice hockey pucks made.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's really cool. Our logos on, on ice hockey pucks, and that's just a really nice thing The fact he travelled 6,000 miles to get to a show or something, just still amazes me. And that happens quite a lot, But that's a really nice memento thing.
Yeah. Is he the furthest fan that you know of?
We keep meeting all sorts of people. We've had, over these past few years, because the shows are way more sporadic.
Yeah.
People really do make some crazy level of effort. So, we've had people flying from the States a few times. Met some guys from Greece that had flown in. Nearly says, a bunch of guys I met from France who'd flown in. That was, they're nearly next door neighbours, aren't they?
Yeah.
But this does happen. So when you get people complaining that you're playing in Nottingham and why aren't you playing Derby? Look on a little bit. The world's not that big.
I'm gonna refer back to one of my earlier podcasts with Tara Rawson. Trust me, you don't want to play in Derby, she said. I am a Nottingham podcast, so I can't get away with saying that. But there's nothing wrong with going to Derby, and I must get over to Derby soon because I see so many bands over there that don't come here.
We played our scariest show ever in Derby.
All right. Why was it scary?
I reckon this would be one of the first gigs we ever did. So probably only our third, fourth gig, something like that.
Yeah.
So we hadn't learned anything by this point, and you got offered gigs and you just went and played them. And we basically played it kind of looked like, Aleppo or something like that. There was nothing left of this place.
Right.
It was, we pulled up and we were like, what the hell's this? And we were, good middle class boys as well. And we played this. I think it was basically like a garage with a couple of punk bands and it was run by Rastas.
Oh, right.
And they were, place was just full of people with baseball bats, and it was just like, what the hell, what the hell? And I think we were supposed to headline it, and we just opened up and stuck everything in the car and went home. Couldn't get out of there fast enough. It was terrifying.
Wow.
But we've had some good shows in Derby over the years as well. I think, is the Rock House still there? Does that still exist? Or I'm showing my age now.
As I said, I'm from Nottingham, so I don't really know Derby. I must get over there.
Shows. We used to play over there with Sabbath and played with the Beyond back then and stuff like that. So, we'd have played over there with some good bands. But yeah, they're always a funny thing, wasn't it, that Notts Derby thing?
It kind of is. And do you know what's even funnier? The border. I never originally came from Nottingham, so trying to understand the border between Derby and Nottingham is a really weird one, because a lot of places have got Derby postcodes, but they're in Nottinghamshire, or they have Nottinghamshire postcodes and they're in Derbyshire.
Yeah, it's all a bit blurry, isn't it?
So...
Yeah, it's the A52.
Yeah.
Somewhere along there's a division, but, it was definitely there back then,
Yeah.
They're very different places. But, Notts always had Rock City, and Rock City was the all-important place. Well,
yeah, and now, to be honest, it's not, as far as I'm aware, and as far as the local scuttlebug will tell you, it's not the best alternative place to go to these days.
No.
You've got so many different places up and coming. And this was one of the things that I talked about in my last podcast, is not that I want to do a best of and get people voting the best venue, but I'm going to have to do it that way because I can't see no other way of doing it. But I want to get a list of all the alternative places together. So when you type into Google top 10 alternative for rock bars in Nottingham, it's going to come up with something other than a cinema, Rock City, and Donington Racecourse.
Interesting. So
if you listened to my podcast last week, unfortunately, the Sal found that out the hard way.
God, I'm not even sure we ever played the Sal.
What, the Salutation?
No, I don't think we ever played it.
Wow.
Our first gig was the Yorker, which probably doesn't even, but it used to be down the road.
Don't know that one.
So the York was just up from Vicky Centre. But, I mean, going back to then, I mean, Rock City was the definitive, but you had Chivago's, and you had the Palais and places like that. There were loads of places doing rock. And it was kind of different people went to those things because they're on different nights. So like Monday night, if you wanted metal, you went to Chivago's, and Thursday night it was the Palais, and then Friday it was Rock City, obviously, and so on. So different crowds went to different places. I think basically what it was, the reason Rock City was so important, I was chatting with my wife the other day, and she lived in London at the time. And all the people in London, you think of all the places in London, all those people wanted to do was go to Rock City. And they used to run bus trips up on a Friday night.
Wow.
And it's because, it really was that important then. So it might not be the place it was now, but then it was an absolute epicenter for anything metal, for anything goth. Both really important things. So I think there's probably two things going on. There was kind of there was the scene stuff around that. You had your big Saturday night, which was all the goths used to go in there in their droves, and so on. So there was a big goth scene out of Nottingham. And then you had a big sort of metal and glam scene out of Nottingham as well. Yeah. So you had this big local thing that drew, and there was big divisions in that as well. To the fact that, all the hair metal lot are drinking one bar and all the thrash lot are drinking the bar opposite the other side of the dance floor. It was that ridiculous.
I'm glad that doesn't exist no more, to be honest.
Oh, it's crazy. There'd be punch-ups over it, which we thought was quite funny, really, because we got on really well with all the hair lot. There's like Grego and Dilly and all these Punky Wayne and all these big sort of local faces from the glam bands, and we knew all them lot, and we used to go to their gigs and all got on like house on fire with them lot.
But that's the same. That's the same for me.
That whole Nottingham Derby thing in a micro version. But what you had was, what you have to remember is Andy Coppin was the DJ at Rock City at that point.
All right.
So Andy Coppin, who went on to be, whatever his title is now, God of Rock or something. But, he's like, Live Nation's
honestly,
vice president.
I honestly don't know the name.
Andy's the guy who runs Download.
Oh, right, okay. That's why I don't know his name, because I'm not a big fan of Download.
No. And you look at what Coppin's done, he's not only runs Download, but he was the guy who got Faith No More to reform to play at Download, or, did that. So he's the guy behind the Bros reformation and all that stuff that's happened. Andy is just enormous in terms of music industry these days, but he was a DJ at Rock City. So you got people like Coppin there, you got all the bands wanted to be there. The likes of Kerrang! Magazine used to come up on a Friday night and just drink and hang out in there. It was massive. You just can't underestimate how big this pull to Rock City really was.
Yeah, I'm guessing you've got your window open.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, because
it's warm.
Sorry about that. There's a motorbike going by.
No, that's no problems. That at least I can prove the fact that you're actually on Skype.
I really am on Skype. I'm in the middle of the district on Skype at the moment.
Wow, that's what business that took you there, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm up here working for a couple of days. So you're a pleasurable diversion for a couple of hours sitting and doing this. It's nice.
Cool. Then I am actually going to ask you, name your most influential band or artist.
Singular. Oh, that's nearly impossible, isn't it?
No. Well, it doesn't have to be singular, because I should just say bands or artists.
See,
people can never say just one.
No, and they shouldn't do either.
I like that. I like that a lot. They shouldn't do.
They shouldn't. How can you have one thing? One thing, if anything, is too much.
Then you're just a copy.
Yeah, for sure. You see, it depends. I guess if it's just listening to music and wherever drawn the most from and so on, there's going to be clusters of stuff in there. And I love to get drawn into conversations about, what are your top 3 gigs of all time? I'll play these games every single time. But I guess if I come down to definitive things that have never gone away from me, bands that I've absolutely hung on to or would walk over hot coals to see, in their heydays and stuff like that. AC/DC for sure, still one of the greatest rock and roll bands ever.
Oh, wow.
Status Quo up until 1978. So any of they were my first band. Any of the Ronnie Dio era, Rainbow, massively important to me. Probably the most common one across the entire band will be Motorhead, because we're all Motorhead fans. They were a massive influence for us. Huge importance for me, bands like Bad Religion, the Ramones I thought were massively important. I could go on and on. I think, later bands, I'd never leave home without any kind of System of a Down track on a phone or on a CD.
Cool.
I wouldn't leave home without, some of the big Pink Floyd albums. It's a fairly broad church, I think, but I think it's nearly important. It's really going to come down to what's the mood I'm in. And I think, when you play those top 10 albums, it changes every 2 minutes. Well, the one I can be more definitive about my top 3 gigs of all time, actually, I can, because they've never shifted.
Hang on. What's your top 3 gigs of all time?
It's funny you should ask me that. But they're all Rock City gigs, actually.
Oh, cool.
So my top 3 gigs of all time will be Slayer on Raining Blood tour.
Oh.
So that was just like nothing I'd ever seen. The Ramones in Rock City. I've never seen a crowd dance like that for anything. And I have a big thing. You were talking about, the fun aspect of Lawnmower. I love to make crowds dance. I'm not bothered about walls of death and stage diving and stuff. I like to see people dancing, and the Ramones made people dance. So the Ramones at Rock City, and Iggy Pop would be the other one. So my top 3 gigs are all Rock City and Slayer, Iggy Pop, and the Ramones.
Wow.
And and that hasn't changed. I mean, none of those gigs are later than Iggy Pop would be the latest of those, probably in about 1990. So I really need a big one to come along. That's, I went to see Muse, 3 weeks ago, was it Muse?
Yeah.
And they were biblically awesome in terms of stage show.
They're a really good band.
Oh, just look, you irrespective of whether you're into Muse musically or not, why wouldn't you want to go and watch that? I like pointing at stuff. I still point at planes when they fly overhead, and a Muse show gives you epic amounts of pointing. So they were amazing, but they wouldn't go into the top 3 gigs because they weren't just that entire feeling that you get when you're locked in a club and it's one of those moments.
I think the last time I got that, and people can say they're alternative, can say they aren't alternative, but when I saw Prodigy at the Nottingham Arena, last year, or was it this year? I can't remember. It was just before Keith. And I tell you something, stage show, instruments, dance music, lights, explosions, everything just kicked off. And like I said to a lot of people at the time, and especially as I said over the podcast, doesn't matter whether you're into rock, metal or pop, everyone was there that night.
Yeah.
It's one of them bands that just, they don't confine themselves to a genre, I guess.
Yeah. And do you know what? There's nothing more pleasing than watching metalers try and dance to the Prodigy. It's still one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I love it.
Well, unfortunately, I've never seen that because I'm always that twat dancing that you're laughing at.
Yeah, and if anybody's ever witnessed me dancing, it's really not a pretty sight. But, it is one of those pleasing things, But you're right. I mean, Prodigy were, just amazing. System, I thought, brought out the same kind of thing in crowds as well. It's the way a crowd will unify behind an entire band like that. And it's not, you're going down the front if you want to bounce, and you're standing in the middle if you want a bit of atmosphere, and you're standing at the back if you want a pint. They're not those kind of gigs. You will get it all the way back to the pint dancing, and that's what it should be, that's when you're a proper gig.
Buy a seat ticket, and then you're still not assured whether the idiot behind you is going to get up and dance or not.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Yeah. Always judge it on a dancing crowd. That's what it should be about.
I honestly, you mentioned him earlier. Acid Rain.
Yeah.
Honestly, when you said about talking to H, was it?
Yeah.
I honestly, the vision I got of the start of their gig last time I saw him at Bloodstock. He came on in a pink tuxedo with a top hat. I think it was a top hat. And he's like, who's in a tent? And everyone went, yeah. Who's watching a band in a tent? Everyone went, yeah. He went, who's sleeping in a tent? Everyone went, yeah. And he went, who's a cunt? And everyone went, yeah.
That sounds like
I honestly, that was one of the most funniest things I've ever seen. And everyone was dancing. There was still the complimentary mosh pit, but there was lots of dancing that night.
Yeah, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
He's a good lad. He's a cheeky lad, but he's a good lad.
Like I just said that, I had to say that, and I've even used the C word, and I probably won't even cut it out because I rate these podcasts explicit anyway. So, unfortunately, they have to expect a little bit of swearing.
Well, it happens on an occasion, doesn't it?
Well, unfortunately, it is an alternative podcast, and we're synonymous for knowing that.
You're getting better at that one, by the way.
Yeah, I'm trying. I really am. My wife will tell you I'm really trying. Okay, name one thing you're excited about in the upcoming 6 months.
Oh, am I excited? Well, I'm excited for the next gig, which isn't long off. So I think that's only about 3 or 4 weeks ago because it's such a random one. I like random gigs.
Yeah.
It's something we've been really fortunate with in this band, going back to the getting put in a box conversation, isn't it? We always have been asked to play with bands that you wouldn't expect us to play with. And we get away with it.
Yeah.
Probably because we put a bit of a show on and stuff like that. So we get to play some fairly odd shows now and then, or So we're doing Camp Festival in 4 weeks.
Okay, what's that?
So Camp Festival is the family-friendly spin-off of Festival, which is the big dance festival, the big electro festival, and it's run by Rob DeBank, who's the Radio 1 DJ. It's his festival down in Dorset. So it's big deal. It's 50,000 people type festival. But you look at the lineup and you will just be, what the fuck is that? I mean, it's extraordinary. So the day we play is us. Yeah. Jess Glynn is on the bill. Human League are on the bill. Wow. I believe the Venga Boys, entertainingly, are on the bill. So is Mr. Motivator, and I didn't even know he was still alive. And
sorry, can I pause you for 2 seconds? I've just heard the dogs barking. Sorry about this. 2 secs. Right, sorry about that.
Quite amazing. Excellent.
Honestly,
I own 2 dogs, by the way, so I empathise.
No, it was simply the fact of I've got OCD and I'm slightly on the autistic scale. So I have to lock my front door. Now, whether my wife goes out and I remember to take the keys out is a different matter. Because I do live in Old Baseford.
And once you've thought it,
Yeah.
you can't unthink it.
No, so I couldn't have sat here going, is she stood at the door or not? But yeah, right. I've got to get my breath back. That's 2 flights of stairs. God.
All I could hear, by the way, was as you went down the stairs. It was delightfully comedic.
I'm going to have to cut the stairs part, but yeah.
I enjoyed the stairs.
I'll send you a copy on MP3. As you were saying, Mr. Motivator.
Yeah, so Mr. Motivator's on it. So you've got this, it is billed as a family-friendly festival.
Yeah.
And then you've got us, Napalm Deth, Phil Campbell and Diamond Head, all playing on this bill as well. So
Napalm Deth.
Yeah.
Grind band.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
It's just crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's so what it is this thing that Earache keep doing, where they did a stage at Glastonbury a couple of years ago, didn't they? Where they put some extreme metal bands on for the first time ever at Glastonbury, and it went so well that Rob DeBank apparently contacted Earache and said, "You've got to come and curate a stage at my festival." So that's why we're doing it. So we're playing this camp festival in about 4 weeks with Jess Glynn and the Human League and Napalm Death and Phil Camp. And it's delightful. I'm really looking forward to it because it's all a bit teacups and bunting and kids running around, and then us. And the idea of that is just delightful. So I love the fact we get offered stuff like that.
I think that's quite amazing.
So I'm really looking forward to that. So that's certainly one of the things I'm looking forward to. Bandwise, we're doing something we never said we'd do again, which was writing new material, and we seem to be headlong into writing new material at the moment.
Sorry, I don't care if you take this offensively, but have you ever seen Still Crazy?
I've not seen Still Crazy. I don't think I've seen it.
Oh my God, seriously, go and check out that movie. Because you saying you're writing new material and you kept saying at the beginning you're over 50. Seriously, you need to watch that movie before you start writing the material.
Okay.
Honestly, you will write better material if you watch that movie. That is not a guarantee, and we do not endorse this movie on this podcast.
Right, I'm on it. So we are writing. So we'll see what happens with that. But at the moment, we I don't know. There's probably 14 tracks knocking around, I think, something like that, and it's sounding pretty damn good. I think people might be a bit surprised. It's not exactly dawning of a new age, and we're moving into a phase or anything. It's an absolute row, but we're quite enjoying doing that. So I'm intrigued to see what, or if anything, we'll do with that, or if not, it's enough to spice up the live set. Yeah. So we chucked a couple of those in last time we did a club show, and they went down an absolute storm. So we're going to play around with that. So there's a few, there's a few bits on the horizon band-wise that'll be exciting me, which is quite nice.
That is honestly, I think that is one of the best answers I've had for what are you excited about coming up.
Well,
excluding me running downstairs,
stick and tell you where I'm going on holiday or something, because those things really excite me. But band-wise, which is what you're bothered about. Odd festivals and the oddity of writing new songs are equally delightful.
Honestly, I'm not. I don't have an agenda to this, and this was something someone said to me when I said, "Oh, can we do a chat on the podcast?" And they said, "I'm not going to tell you any dirt about bands." And I was like, "I don't want to know dirt about bands. I want to know about you and Nottingham and the alternative scene." And he went, "Oh, well, that's not what everyone else does." And I'm like, I'm not everyone else. I'm the most awkward podcast presenter you've ever met.
Not the slightest. Honestly, it's a pleasure because it's a nice chat about music, and that's good stuff. Like I say, I can't tell you how many interviews with us go two ways. They really do, because you're in a band like Lawnmower, Deth.
Yeah.
Interviews will definitely go one of two ways, and it's either this kind of interview where you can just sit and enjoy it and relax, and it's just a good old chat.
Yeah.
Or it's people who think, well, you guys are crazy, and therefore I've got to ask you crazy questions. And then, what am I supposed to say to that? They just ask you the most ludicrous stuff. And it's just hideous. It's hideous. I'd much rather do stuff like this.
Okay, next question. So, Led Zeppelin actually had a bathtub full of baked beans. What's your... No, I'm not going to do that. If you don't know what that story's about, I'll go search it. I'm not even going to carry on going on about that. Oh, my God. No, I really do enjoy that. The fact that I'm just being me, and someone said this the other night, and they were like, I really enjoyed listening to your podcast because it's not pretentious. You're not trying to, well, basically do what everyone is meant to do on a podcast. Yeah.
I think the best podcasts are the ones that I listen to a lot of podcasts when because I spend a lot of time in the car. Podcasts are a really pleasurable way of whiling away time, because if they're the right ones, that are conversational,
yes,
and not stooged and not inflamed in the way you just said, and so on, that they make really great company.
Yeah.
And that's what on the way up here, I was really surprised by it. But I'd been listening to Paul Whitehouse, Bob Mortimer's book on an Audible.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, it's just going to be them reading the book, but it'd be worth a listen. And it wasn't. It was way more like a podcast rather than the book. And it was them just chatting about, about the fact that both had heart illnesses and so on, and why they got this common bond and blah, blah, blah. But it was just this really interesting conversational story.
Yeah.
And it's great. And I like stuff like that. It's got way more soul to it, way more meaning than So what did he do in 1988, and that kind of stuff. It's much better.
I think they're some of the best ones, and I regularly listen to Recording Studio Rockstars, Working Class Audio, and Bobby Ozinski.
Okay.
And it's all about the music industry, but it's three different aspects. Because the Recording Studio Rockstars is more about the gear. It's more about, what do you do in studios? The Working Class Audio is, how do you do this in your life? And then the Bobby Ozinski is about business. And then suddenly Warren Hewitt started doing a podcast from Produce Like a Pro. But unfortunately, his are not as exciting, simply because all he's doing is re-releasing his videos.
Okay.
And I'm like, nah, can't deal with that. I'm going to kind of tune out.
Yeah, a bit of a roll out the barrel job.
Yeah. The
shame.
what?
It's just recycle it and whack it out there again.
Oh, yeah.
That's a shame, that.
Yeah, no. Because do you know who Warren Hewitt is?
No.
No, he produced The Fray, Aerosmith.
Okay.
And Ace Frehley, he did James Blunt, he did a bit with Adele and everyone, but he's a really good tutor for learning music, but unfortunately his podcasts could be better.
Okay.
Yeah. So, he's someone worth listening to anyway.
Interesting.
If you go on YouTube.
Okay.
So, anyway, that's the geek side of me out of this.
We've all got one.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you've been out of Notts for a little while, but I am going to ask you the last question before we bring this to an end. And I think this is going to be something that you're probably going to talk a long time on. In your opinion, do you remember what makes the Notts alternative scene great?
Oh yeah, well yeah, I could give you chapter and verse on what it was like back then.
And I added "remember" into that question.
Well done, because if it was name some now, I'm screwed. That's not strictly true, because there's two bands down there that I do like a lot, but we'll move to them in a bit. So at the time, it was a burgeoning thing. Was the Notts scene? I'll partially come back to one of the answers earlier on. It was very encompassing, in as much as there was so much of it and so much around it to support it. So there were, for bands like us, when we were starting, in that early thrash scene, there was a big Nottingham scene. So I guess the bigger two of that would have been us and Sabat, who were by far the most important to the British thrash bands, irrespective of anything else.
Slightly.
But happened to be from Nottingham as well, and friends of ours. So, we go right back to day dot with those guys. So you had us and Sabat, but then, loads and loads of, what would have been local sort of thrash bands started up. But then you had the whole punk stuff that, was pretty closely aligned to that. So you got Concrete Socks, Heresy, Intense Degree, all important hardcore bands that got signed and released stuff around then. You got a big goth scene. Later on, you got a big hair metal scene. And it was all underpinned, generally, take the punk stuff out because they'd never gone in the place, but, it was all underpinned by Rock City. So you had a massive thing going on. And then even sort of more regionally around Notts, in Nottinghamshire, there was, big sort of hot spots. So, Mansfield had loads of bands coming through. Sutton in Ashfield had loads of bands and a massive metal scene going on, and again, it was underpinned by venues. So, in Sutton you had the Golden Diamond, which I still think puts stuff on, I believe.
I keep seeing them come up in the gig guide.
Yeah, used to go and see, bands who shouldn't have been playing, probably would have played Notts normally, but ended up playing in Sutton and stuff like that. So, you had loads of bands like that going on. You had Savage came out of Mansfield, who were, verging on sort of breakthrough stuff for the new wave of British heavy metal stuff. And so on. And then there was quite a big indie scene around that as well. So that would bring in a lot of other venues. So, the Garage used to, have a lot of stuff going on and stuff like that. And you had
Where was the Garage?
It's down on the Lace Market.
Don't think that's still there.
So, I'll tell you how important it is. I went to see, I saw one of Napalm Death's first gigs there, and they were opening up for DRI. So, it was, and John Peel turned up to that. So that'll tell you how important the Nottingham scene was.
Oh, my God.
So Peel was there, and we gave him a demo that night because he was just stood there in the DJ booth and went over and had a chat like you do as kids and said, we're in a band, here's our tape. And so Notts was massive, but then what was going on, particularly with the thrash scene and so on, there were kind of these centres all building in other areas as well. So you had the Yorkshire stuff going on. Yeah. So the Yorkshire scene was really important. You've already mentioned Acid Rain. Who were all sort of Leeds Harrogate way, but the West Yorkshire stuff in particular was huge. So you had all the, what was early in their days back then, but, Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride and Anathema and all those bands all came out of the West Yorkshire, Halifax, that kind of area. So there's a big scene going on there. Not surprisingly, there was a London scene going on and so on.
Yeah.
So you had these really sort of burgeoning scenes that seemed to be quite regional. Don't ask me why. Milton Keynes was another one.
Yeah.
But you knew if you turned up and played a show in West Yorkshire, so Bradford or Halifax or somewhere like that, there was going to be a good crowd, and chances are you were playing on bills with, Carcass and Paradise Lost and Us and so on. All infancy, those bands, but we're all pulling crowds in. And so on. So so the whole scene back then was, pretty. Vibrant sounds fluffy, doesn't it? But it really was vibrant, and I think one of the reasons was that whole. There was a. This is going to sound like an old fart talking now, but there's a really pleasurable aspect to it, the way you got introduced to this stuff. In as much as tape trading going on, and fanzines, which were an absolute art form, and the only way people could get fanzines shifted was to turn up to gigs, and you bought them at gigs.
Can I just interject for 2 seconds? So I've heard about fanzines going on a lot in America through the podcast that I was talking about earlier, but were they a thing in the UK?
God, hell yeah.
Wow.
Not just.
Did you call it Xeroxing as well?
Oh yeah.
Cool.
I mean, they were literally, kids who were writing these things out of the bedroom and then photocopying them at work and selling them for 20p at gigs. That's how I first met Bill from Carcass. He used to write for a fanzine out of Liverpool.
Wow.
And he wrote to me, and I he wrote me a letter with the questions, and I wrote back to him, and
Can't say I really get on with Carcass's music. I don't really get it personally.
I think they got more and more interesting as time went on. Artwork's an amazing album.
They're good, I must admit, but there's just something about them just doesn't tick with me.
Well, he's like Peter Pan, is Bill. He doesn't seem to age.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. But fanzines really, really were a thing, And there was probably 3 things I really remember from back then. Fanzines were one of them. That's how I really discovered a lot of bands through fanzine. And you did used to write off and order the American ones for sure.
Really?
But then the same way you'd pick up, if you went to a hardcore show down the Mardi Gras or something like that, there was bound to be somebody selling a fanzine, and you'd go home with one and read it. That was great. So I remember that. Rehearsal tape trading, that was the next big thing that I remember. So it wasn't so much the fact that you'd have taped whatever new album for me, because anybody could do that.
Yeah.
The real commodity was the rarer the tape, the better it was. So, used to send around tape trading lists, and people would get really excited because you got a, Hyrax rehearsal from, 1987 or something like that. And they sounded shit. They must have done, but these things were gold, people had, I'll swap you this, and this for one of those, and so you discovered a lot of the, the American bands. I remember having sort of, Exodus rehearsal tapes before they got signed and stuff like that. So I remember discovering a lot of stuff that way. And then hang
on. Exodus rehearsal tapes.
Oh yeah, no, it was better than that. I remember the way, you'd have Gary Holt's phone number in it and stuff like that.
Wow.
Because that's what it was like. I know our demo tape had got, our bass player's home address and phone number on it, because we expected about 2 copies. And what happened if somebody wanted the third one, You didn't think things would happen. These things were mad. And then the biggest joy, and this is the biggest one that's missing for anything from me, as much as I love Spotify and that immediacy of being able to get anything I want there and then, is the fact that you used to get inserts inside records.
Yeah.
And inserts were interesting things, because it'd be photos of the band and who were they hanging out with, and it might have flyers for gigs in it and all that. And you discovered a lot from that as well. So, there's some really interesting ways of being into things, but they were all part of that stuff that then influenced you, going back to your question about what was the local scene like, all those things fueled it, because that's how you found out about things, and then you got influenced. And if you did it, maybe another band would do it, and another band off the back of that would do it, or they'd swap guitar players or something like that, and another band would spring out. So all these things were going into the melting pot. People just soaking it up.
I honestly, when you were saying about the whole soaking it up and enjoying it, and especially when you said about the covers, I'm literally just looked over to my left, and today I'm a big Nine Inch Nails fan as well.
Okay.
And finally, I got sent another copy. I'd say another copy because I had a copy years ago and I lost a lot of CDs. But I've just got another copy of Year Zero. And it is not only just a copy of Year Zero that they've sent me. I don't think they realised it wasn't actually just your bog standard Year Zero. But I've just got a US import that's still got Be a Patriot, Be an Informer on the label, saying anti-piracy. And this copy of Year Zero is probably worth more than I paid for it for $2.99.
Yeah.
And I tell you something, the insert and everything, I was trying to poke it out whilst you were talking, but it's got so much random, beautiful stuff in it that you don't get with an MP3.
You lose that whole thing. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, in fact, that sparked the next thought as well. What shouldn't be underestimated in what was important in Nottingham as well was the two record shops.
Oh, right.
Loads of record shops, but there were two shops that were massively important. So you had Wayhead Records down on Hirsch Yard and Select a Disc on Market Street. Of course, neither of them are there now. But, I mean, Wayhead was tiny. In fact, last time I was in Notts, I went and walked down Hirsch Yard just to go and see where it used to be. And the shop must have been minuscule in terms of size.
Yeah.
And is now a bar. But, Wayhead was the rock shop. So, you wanted your metal and you wanted to discover what was going on. You went to Wayhead. And if you wanted the alternative stuff, or the real garage stuff or the punk stuff, you went to Select a Disc. And we spent so much time in those shops that we knew the guys behind the bar and you used to see them at gigs all the time and so on and so on. So what would end up happening is you go in, and it's good sales and good on them. But, I used to go into those shops and one of the guys in Wayhead would say, I've been waiting for you to come in. I've stuck this behind because this has got you all over it. You need to check this band out.
Yeah.
And you just buy it on their recommendation because they knew you, they knew what what you were into, and they were discovering stuff for you, and they'd find it before anybody because they were running these record shops. And they brought, and both those shops used to bring you different things, but they were hugely influential as to what was going on. And you wanted to know what underground shows were going on or were just coming up. That's the first place you went and stuck a poster up.
Well, to be honest, especially the people that are in the shops, they'd get through 8-9 albums a day if they were open for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Well, even more than that, when you're talking before the 2000s, when people were like, oh, hang on, we can fill a CD up for like nearly an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I kind of miss that because you walk into HMV these days, and as much as they're really nice when you're actually spending, if you actually want to talk about something, they're not interested.
Well, they won't be. They want to sell you one of them big plastic bobblehead things they seem to love selling, or a new Xbox game or something like that.
Personally, I wanted to say they wanted to go home and just drink, but
Well, probably that as well. And why wouldn't you want to do that? But those kind of shops were never set up for that kind of thing.
Of course they weren't.
Way ahead was, and I mean, the other one was Shades Records down in London. Everybody knew about Shades. You picked up any metal magazine back, whether it be Kerrang or Metal Hammer or Terrorizer or any of those things. Yeah. Shades always had album playlists in the back. And they were the London equivalent of Way Ahead. They knew what was going on, and demo tapes would appear in their playlists.
Yeah.
and they'd be spotting these bands way before they got signed and getting you in, and you go hunting for demo tapes. And these were bands that inevitably got signed, like Metallica and stuff like that, They were all discovered, way before on those sort of early demo tapes and stuff like that. And it's because of these kind of shops. Then you've got Earache Records on top of that. You keep thinking about the Knots stuff. It just keeps coming through.
I really need to go and speak to someone at Earache Records. Is there anyone you suggest to me?
Yeah, speak to Dan Tobin.
Dan Toby?
Yeah,
okay.
Dan Tobin, yeah, Tobin.
Yeah.
Dan's a really good guy, and he's been there forever.
Yeah.
But Dan was at Peaceville before Earache, so his knowledge and his history and his love of music is extraordinary.
Okay, cool. I will definitely do that. Right. Is there anyone you'd like to thank before, or give a big shout out to before I actually bring this podcast to a close?
I'm just going to say thank you to you for letting me babble on for about an hour and a half.
Okay, I'm starting to take this really to heart at the moment, because everyone keeps saying to me, thank you for doing this, thank you for doing this, thank you for doing this. And I'm like, thank you for doing what? They're like, well, you're kind of talking about the Nottingham scene and we're all trying to work together to make it better. And I'm like, well, no, I just did it because I love the scene. So I kind of enjoy it.
Slightly different to that, because you've just evoked a lot of nice memories for me tonight.
Yeah,
I've been out of Notts for 20 years, but it's made me talk and think about some really good times back then. It's great, so I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, I'm definitely going to book you in for next year then to talk on the podcast again then.
Perfect. I shall look forward.
I think that'd be interesting to see how I'm progressing in a year, and then I can tell you more stuff.
I can tell you I'll be a year older.
Well, I can tell you I'm always going to be as old as my tongue, and I'll always be a little older than my teeth.
I'll take that.
Unless I'll lose them all, and then they'll be younger than me. Right, okay, I need to bring the podcast to a close, but we'll have a chat when I click the end button. So thank you very much for today. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Knots Rockers, for listening to NottsRockCast over YouTube. If you would like to check us out on your favourite podcast player, please search NottsRockCast. And don't forget, if you're on social media platforms, give us a like, give us a share. You'll find us at NottsRockCast. Anyway, till next time, keep it Knots, keep it rocks.
NottsRockCast is an association with Regular Riot. Welcome to NottsRockCast, the Notts Alternative Scene podcast. And here is your host, Jethro D, bringing you everything Notts and rock.